Hello, everybody. I'm Brady. I cannot live stream things, apparently.
Oh.
And I knock bottles down, too. It's all good. Welcome to the Junior Developer Happy Hour. This has been going on probably around 3 months at this point. We started when quarantine had already started. I know that, well, Sam and I both know that it's just rough getting your first job in tech if you're changing careers or if it's your first job after school or something. So then, especially because of just everything going on with COVID-19, we wanted to put together another resource to try to help people out, because there's always lots of questions, and just knowing that other people are going through the same stuff that you are, I think is helpful. So we've been doing this every weekend. Took off like 4th of July weekend, but other than that, it's been every single weekend for about 3 months. We are planning on continuing every single weekend for the foreseeable future. Let's see, we've got in the Jitsi chat, we have a link to the Slido. The Slido is a really good place to ask questions for us to answer. And then if there are any like follow-up questions or little comments related to what we're saying, and any resources that we talk about should end up in the Jitsi part of the chat. So Slido for discussion questions, because those can be upvoted and we can make sure to get to the questions that you all are most interested in hearing get answered. And then the rest can be in the Jitsi chat. So I think that is probably good. Oh, also just at the end of this, if you hang around, they have been tending to get long, but if you're willing to hang around, we'll stop recording, and then everyone is totally welcome to introduce themselves and come off mute and like getting to know everybody. So without further ado, oh wait, no, it's still, you gotta hear all about me still. I am always happy to connect with people. This is my LinkedIn. My Twitter is also just at Brady Merkel, and it's spelled out there. And then these will be posted on, I'm starting this YouTube channel. So this is my channel. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I grew up for a really long time. I knew from a pretty early age that I liked learning spoken languages. I majored in Spanish and then minored in Italian and then moved to a German-speaking country after college. And I was just trying to figure out what I was going to do with that for a long time, and eventually discovered that computer languages were really, really cool too. Got to make cool things with them. And I mean, there's some decent perks that come with being a software engineer too. So I went to a boot camp in 2017. Now I work at Nordstrom Trunk Club. I work on the customer-facing app. My team specializes in just the onboarding experience. And yeah, like 90% of my work has been front end. Our stack is back end Ruby. Probably shouldn't be saying too much because we've got a competitor here, Stitch Fix. Yeah, so hopefully that gives you an idea of who I am, where I came from, and some of the sorts of questions maybe that you might want to hear my perspective on.
No, Brady, tell us more about your stack and your back end and how everything works.
We'll see if we have time for that. Cool, I'll let Sam take it from here.
Yeah, I just gave a quick intro. I'm currently a front-end engineer at Lyft. I work in a mapping organization building internal tools, mostly just geo visualizations, just visualizing data they have on the map, just to debug things on the map or investigate things that happen or whatever. So yeah, and I also went to Dev Bootcamp. I went to Dev Bootcamp in 2013. I also have a computer science degree though, which is a little different from a lot of bootcamp graduates. I got my computer science degree a long time ago during the dot-com bust, which I never did use. I never became a software engineer. I failed my first time trying to break into the industry. I gave up too quickly looking for a job. It was rough back then, so that's why I tell people not to give up, because I gave up the first time I tried to break into the industry after about 6 months without like trying much. I probably only applied to like a couple jobs. I lived in Hawaii at the time, so there wasn't many software companies, and I was not like applying at other places.
It was probably harder to find jobs back then and had less resources and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's nothing on the internet. You know, now you can like keep learning. There's all kind of learning resources. There's communities like this. I didn't even know. I don't even know if meetups were a thing back then.
Probably not, or at least not in its current form.
Yeah, so I had nobody. I didn't have any like mentors to like give me advice or anything, and I was a dummy and I just gave up. And then I did all kinds of other stuff, joined the Peace Corps, and then after I came back from the Peace Corps is when I went to the boot camp, and then I started my software engineering journey after that. And I did contract work, tried to help a friend start a startup, worked at a small startup as the first engineer, worked at a big company, worked at called Here Technologies. Then I worked at Pivotal Cloud Foundry. They do 100% pair programming, which is different from a lot of companies. And now I work at Lyft. So that's the short version of my journey. I'll hand it over to Ben now. He's our special guest this week.
I had a quick question for you though before I go.
Yeah.
So what was bootcamp like having a CS degree? Did everything like come back to you, or was it fresh again?
It's totally different.
Your brain had garbage collected all of that information and you had to learn it again?
It's totally different. Because it's all practical. It wasn't like, it's a totally different experience from computer science. It probably did help in the beginning, like when we were just getting on the command line and stuff. That wasn't like super like foreign to me, because Dev Bootcamp first 3 weeks is just all command line. You don't touch the browser until week 4 at Dev Bootcamp. Well, Dev Bootcamp doesn't exist anymore, but when they did, the first 3 weeks, you build apps in the terminal with just Ruby. You don't use like Ruby on Rails or Sinatra. They kind of graduate you. You started on the command line, and then the next 3 weeks we build apps with like Sinatra to get you building web apps with like a very simple like kind of framework, because Ruby on Rails is kind of like, it's kind of overwhelming. I think if you're like a newbie like coming in, like what is all this routes and all this controllers and models and all. And Sinatra is just like one file. You just like put it in, boom. Oh, I have a web app now. So, and for those who are doing Python, Flask is similar to not Sinatra. But yeah, so it did help, but then the bootcamp was just a totally different experience. It's just building apps, learning how to work in teams and project management, and learning all like the startup lingo. I went to Dev Bootcamp in San Francisco, so when I came back from the Peace Corps, I didn't know what anybody was like saying in San Francisco. The language has totally changed from when I left to when I came back. Like people are talking about like startups and SaaS and all kinds of stuff that I didn't know. So yeah.
Cool. Okay, I guess I'll introduce myself. So thanks for having me. I really appreciate being able to be here. I really enjoy being able to help the next generation, I guess is what I'll call. You know, I'll give a little bit about my background, but I really love helping bootcamp grads, especially because there has been a negative perception, I'll say, about bootcamp grads. I think it's getting better and better as more and more are being successful and becoming senior engineers and stuff like that. So I know it's hard to get started. So whatever I can do to help, I'll try and answer any questions. So my name is Ben Ilegbodu. I am a principal front-end engineer at Stitch Fix. So as Brady said, you know, we play in the same space. And even though when I was invited by Sam and I saw Brady worked at Trunk Club, I still decided to come anyway because, you know, I really want to help you. It's all about you, you know, despite Brady. I'm just kidding. But I've been at Stitch Fix for 6 months or so. I started at the end of October. And even though I live in the Bay Area in a town called Pittsburgh, which is like far, far away from San Francisco, even though I'm in the Bay Area and Stitch Fix is in San Francisco, I'm still a remote employee because I didn't want to commute in. That was one of the benefits and the perks of Stitch Fix. About half of engineering is remote, so all over the country, and then half is in headquarters, or was in headquarters until we all became remote thanks to this pandemic. And I work on our basically front-end platform team. Really, it's we have a customer-facing organization, and there's a platform team within that organization, and I am the front-end representative on that team. So I'm a front-end platform team of one at the present moment, and my focus is on leveling up basically the organization in front-end because it was kind of a gap of the team in general. We had a lot of full stack engineers and we were doing more and more sophisticated user interfaces, and we needed more experience in that area. And I'm building out our design system in React, our component library. So that's been a lot of my focus as well, working on that. So been there about 6 months. Prior to that, I was at Eventbrite for 4.5 years in a similar role as well. For most of the time I was there, but I kind of moved around and had different positions. One position I had was I was a manager for about 6 months to 9 months or so. Just opportunities arose, and over the past many years, leaders have been asking me to become a manager, and I was like, no, I really just want to be an IC. But I decided finally I should at least try it out to know that I never want to do it again. So it turned out that I didn't want to do it again, not because management, you know, sucks or anything. I just found that I find fulfillment in delivering code. Like, I love helping people out. I love to see them be successful. Obviously, that's why I'm here. But I didn't find fulfillment in that. So went back to being an IC towards the end of my time at Eventbrite. However, in becoming a manager, I got to learn like the whole other side of things. So I had to recruit people, look at resumes, did tons of interviewing and stuff like that. So I have a lot of experience in that area. Hopefully I can answer any questions along those lines. And then prior to Eventbrite, I was at Zazzle, a company called Zazzle that does customized products like t-shirts, hats, bags, shoes, you name it. They've done many more now. They do customized face masks now, I found out when I went to the site, Zazzle.com. And I was there for almost 9 years. That was my job out of college. So I've been doing this professionally for about 14 years or so, but I started doing web development back in high school. So I've been doing this for about 20 years or so. So I've kind of seen how things have changed over time. But if you want to follow me, I'm on Twitter. Here, I'll share my Twitter handle. It's just Ben MVP. I'm basically Ben MVP everywhere that exists. Anything that starts up, I just got to snag Ben MVP so that I just squat on it, really. And my website is benmvp.com, of course, there. So you can check that out. I want to do a pitch. I have these online workshops, these virtual workshops, short ones, 3 hours, that I call mini shops because they're short. And I have a couple of ones that I have active right now. I'm doing one on Tuesday, actually, That's about going from React. If you've done React before and you did it in classes, the new version is now hooks. And I'm doing a workshop on going from classes to hooks. So I'm giving away 2 free tickets to that to anybody here who is interested and wants to learn that. If you already knew React but didn't know hooks yet and want to know hooks to make yourself, even more presentable for jobs, just reach out to me on Twitter, DM me, and hopefully I'll pick 2, and then I can give you a ticket to that. So I was going to wait until the end, but I might as well just let you know about that now. Okay, that is my intro. Brady, I exceeded you in the time of introducing myself, so you can never feel bad ever again.
And you can also let people know at the end, remind them in case anyone comes in.
I will.
Cool. So awesome. I see in our Slido people are upvoting. I love it. I'm just going to go ahead and start at the top. And first question is, does Stitch Fix have an apprenticeship program? If not, are there any plans to create one?
So unfortunately, we don't have an apprentice program yet. It's definitely something that we should have, and we're seeing a lot of companies in our kind of space do the same thing. But unfortunately, we don't have anybody whose job that would be, or who would be able to help it move along and be successful. So we've got managers and we've got engineers, but we don't have anybody else in that kind of space to help a program. So unfortunately, no, we don't have an apprentice program. And I actually saw another question on there about hiring junior engineers at Stitch Fix. So we do hire junior engineers, though, coming in straight out of Bootcamp. And there are a number of people out of Bootcamp that we've hired at Stitch Fix and have progressed and grown and been promoted and such. But we found so far, at least for some reason, how we're structured, the junior engineers who have been in San Francisco, in person, have been the ones that have been more successful than the ones that have been remote. So I don't know if it's that folks that are remote feel less connected, or I'm not quite sure. This is what I've been told before I even got here and what my manager told me about. But yeah, being in the office and headquarters has been more successful. So I don't know what that means now, given the pandemic and that everybody's remote, but that has been the situation.
Is that the question? How likely is it for an employer to take on a junior developer in a remote role? Is that what?
Yeah, that's the question I would see. So that's us. I know obviously the other companies that are fully remote and they will take on that kind of role. I think it's key that company has a process in place for providing mentorship, especially if it's remote. So that you'll have a buddy or that you can partner with that'll help you along the way. And even if it's not remote, but really what I have seen over the amount of time that I've been doing this is that the folks that are junior coming in that are the most successful are the ones that have somebody who can help them kind of get started. Because you've gone to a boot camp, you've graduated from school, you've learned a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, you really don't know much. I didn't know much when I was coming out. Everybody doesn't know much compared to what you're going to be able to know as you start being in the industry. So finding that company that can help you, that has had somebody before and is not just hoping that you'll just come in, hit the ground running, and they can just leave you there to solve tickets, is super important. So I've never been in the position of graduated from a boot camp and trying to find a job for 6 months, 9 months, a year. So I know once you find that first job that's giving you a chance, you just want to jump on it. But I have interviewed and seen resumes from people who went to a boot camp, went to their first position, either got let go or left because it wasn't a good position for them. And they are no further along than somebody who's just straight out of a boot camp. because they didn't have that mentorship, that ability to grow where they are. So really having that be a focus is important. So when you're interviewing, you're being interviewed obviously to see if you have the ability to do the work, which we can talk about more in other questions, but also take the time to interview the company as well, especially your manager, especially other people who will be on your team, to see what they're like and if they have the ability to mentor, or if they're aware that that is something that's necessary.
Yeah, I love that. Sorry, go ahead, Sam.
I just have some good news that Lyft has an apprenticeship program being announced next week. So inside information for you guys.
Yep.
Hopefully I don't get busted for that. I don't think I will. It's coming next week.
Yeah.
Just keep your eye on the Lyft careers
awesome.
portal.
Y'all done that before, right?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
this year it's going to be bigger, I think.
Awesome.
So I'll post a link in our Slack as well as soon as it goes live. I just got an email last week letting us know that they're launching it next week. They're going to start accepting applications, and I also volunteered to like help out with the program. So I don't know too much about it, but if it's like our internship program, there is like every intern gets like a mentor. I have an intern right now. The internship program is for people at universities though. So the apprenticeship program is different. Apprenticeship program is for people with non-traditional backgrounds. The job description says like no experience necessary, like legit. Not that doesn't mean like 1 to 2 years experience. It means no experience as an engineer. They I think it looks good if you have some work experience like in a different field, because then you've been working professionally, but they don't require any experience as a developer. And they also, in the job description, it says if you have a CS degree, they suggest you apply for one of their other positions, because they want the apprenticeship program to be for people with non-traditional backgrounds, just because they're trying to increase diversity within Lyft, just because that's how you can make better products according to like studies people have done. Like just get people from a diverse background, and then that just helps you build better products. Also, I have a link
question about that. So when you say no experience necessary, does that mean that you went to a boot camp and now this is your first job, or like literally like you've never done development and you're interested in development?
No, it's just that you don't you never had like a professional experience as a developer.
Gotcha.
So I think they encourage bootcamp graduates, self-taught people, just people coming from non-traditional paths into software engineering. Also, I just posted a link. I post that almost every week, I think. I know the person who made this site. Key values and culture queries is Ben was talking about. When you get an interview, you're also interviewing the company. This site helps you formulate questions to ask during your interview.
Nice.
And it helps you formulate the questions to ask in like a better way than most people ask. Like most people ask like, when do people leave the office? Like if you're asking about work-life balance, and then this site like tells you a better way to phrase that question. Because then if you ask it like that, it might look like you don't want to work or something like that. I don't know. So yeah.
So one more question about your apprentice program. Who's running it at Lyft? Do you know? Like what is it? Recruiting or something?
It must be. Somebody put together a program. Like the internship program is really built out. There's all kinds of resources. So I assume the apprenticeship is the same way. Like for the internship as a mentor, like I have to do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
There's like a whole checklist of skills that I go over with my mentee. There's like a midterm evaluation where they present their work, and then I have to like fill out a feedback form, and then I have to discuss the feedback form with my intern. And at the end, there's like a final presentation where like a lot of different people like are invited to a final presentation by the intern to demonstrate all the work they did. And like interns is pretty heavy duty for like an internship. Like they need to like first come up with like a tech spec. They got to make a detailed like
Nice.
technical document to like plan out all the work they're gonna do and like describe like different ways they might approach doing it, the goals of the project, possible things that might go wrong.
Hmm.
And then they have to actually implement that tech spec. And they have to work like cross, like at least my intern needs to work with like another team at Lyft. So it's
That's great.
pretty well defined, I think, the program. So I'm expecting the apprenticeship program to be the same way, even though I don't
Mhm.
know too much about it yet. I might be getting a lot more information if they ask me for help with that, because I filled out a form to say I'm willing to help with like anything. Like
Yeah.
they have a form, there's like different things you can help with, like interviewing and like I forget what the other options were. I just checked all of them. Um,
Yeah,
so
that sounds like we have an apprenticeship program and an internship program at Trunk Club, and our interns also are we will alternate it. Or this has been how we've done things in the past. Every other year we'll do an intern, we'll take an intern, and then the off years we'll take apprenticeships. And I'm realizing I don't know a ton about our intern program. I imagine it's similar, but our apprenticeship program is a 6 month. Well, interns are only 3 months, and they need to be in college over summer. But apprenticeships are 6 month program, and it's very detailed, like what Sam was
Mhm.
describing. And we're trying to expand that program because somebody on my team did some research and realized that people who went through the apprenticeship program and not only that apprenticeship program, but other really, really entry level roles and have been brought up to engineers have a much longer tenure at our company. I think we all
Yeah.
appreciate that. Hey,
Yeah,
you gave me a
definitely.
chance. I want to stay around and help you out for a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen the same, even hiring folks straight out of boot camp, like the longevity, because of the help in helping them grow, appreciation, like you said, as well, stay the longest as well. So it's beneficial for everyone,
Totally.
really. So somebody in the apprentice program, after 6 months, what happens after that? Do they get hired on, or they have the option to be hired on?
At my company, every
Yeah.
single person who's been through the apprenticeship program has been hired on.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah,
Cool.
I would like to try to submit to do a talk on that. I feel like a lot of other companies could probably benefit from hearing all the stats that we've come up with over the years.
Definitely.
I just posted a link in the chat for a story about somebody that went through the Lyft apprenticeship program. I haven't read it yet. I just did a Google search, and that was the link that came up.
Awesome. Moving on to the next question. How can I set myself apart in an interview? What could potentially wow a hiring manager to help them decide to give me a shot?
That's a good question. So let's see. So when I was evaluating folks as a manager, I evaluated on kind of 3 aspects. So understanding that, it's a different evaluation than somebody who's been professional. So evaluated on stack. So that's their understanding of the technology that we're using, right? How much depth they have. Stack, there are 3 S's. Stack. I just lost it in my head. Smarts was that. So just kind of a sense of how like you're able to pick up things quickly, even if in the interview you don't know something and we pair on it, then we can see you understanding it and picking it up quickly. And the third one was it started with an S, but I don't remember what the word was. It had to do with like your ability to work hard, basically. And not like work 12 hours a day hard, but like if we pair on something and I teach you this thing about React context, let's say, then the next time, you have, and I give you a link to the document that explains it, like you actually took the time to read it, understand it, and process it. So the next time you pair, like you have an understanding of it. So you are like self-invested in your growth kind of thing. So those three areas. So depending on your ability and where you're at, showcasing one of those areas, I think will help set you apart. So if you have had experience that's different than the typical bootcamp graduate who's done 2 projects in a group project and, graduated, those are the typical 12-week ones. If you have done other projects yourself or have somehow gotten more experience in the technology in React, in Rails, whatever it is, then showcasing that, talking about that, I think will help set you apart. Or, like I said, let's see, how would you show that you show your work ethic? I guess it's just like in your, if all of your experience has been in the boot camp, showcasing, in this team project, I went and learned this new thing so that we could accomplish X, Y, and Z, or something like that. It's really just showcasing that ability, I think will help set you apart, because all the resumes kind of look the same. Everybody kind of has the same amount of experience. So it's like you have to, like you said, showcase your strength to set you apart in that way.
Yeah, I like those 3 S's. I haven't heard that.
Yeah, I don't know what the third S was. I can't remember what it was. But,
I also think. Oh, sorry.
I'm trying to think what that S would be.
I'll let you think a little bit.
I literally can't remember. I don't even know if it was an S. Maybe it never was. Who knows?
I know personally, when I have been talking to candidates at our company who are interviewing, anytime they act really excited and know a little bit extra about our company,
yep,
that's really we pay attention to that. We pay attention to people who seem really eager and like are excited to talk about the projects that they're working on, and like what you're talking about, like this. Yeah, there was this problem, and I figured out this way to solve it. That enthusiasm really shines through.
Exactly. Yeah. And like on the topic of knowing, having researched the company, not like I know people are interviewing like sending 50 resumes, like it's impossible to know details about every 50. But if you're going to have a phone screen or going to have an in-person, like taking the time to know what the company is doing, using the product, maybe even having a suggestion like, I tried this. I think it would be cool if you did this in addition to it, that way. And then also having questions shows engagement, like, because there's going to be some point of time at the end, like, do you have any questions? And like Sam was saying, it's not just like, when do people come in and out, or those kind of general ones. Taking a look at that website, asking like deep questions, wanting to understand how the company runs. Tell me about somebody else who was a bootcamp grad who has been promoted to senior, or what is the process for promotions? Is there a career ladder or not? Like trying to get an understanding of what it's like to be there, and asking those kind of questions will, when they're having the debrief, those kind of things, when we're talking about it amongst ourselves, people always bring those things up. Like, wow, they had such great questions. They really wanted to know what it was like there. And asking questions too, even in the technical interview, like as I know as well, like there's a lot of anxiety and nerves when doing a technical question, but asking questions about like, how does that work? Or in what ways is this problem the problems that you're solving in your daily work? Like, how is this applied to what you're doing? Like, just kind of trying to show that engagement during the interview, I think will really show that that this is not just 1 of 50, like you're really wanting to work here.
Yep. I'd just like to add, like I always say every week, that companies love people that are excited. So if you can show your excitement, I think that helps you stand out. If you're talking to a recruiter, or if you do get an interview and you're excited in the interview, I think that gives you an advantage.
Yeah. In a sense, it's an unfair advantage, right? Because some people that's just not their personality, right?
Yeah.
And I've tried as an interviewer to not penalize somebody for that, because like I can just tell they're an introvert. That's just not their behavior. That's not their personality. So you don't necessarily have to be like, woo, I'm so excited about this thing. Like, can't believe it. You don't, but be excited in your own personality. So if that is asking questions or whatever it is, like, just do it in your own personality. Because if you try to go outside of your personality, then you'll come off as fake, and that'll actually be a negative and such.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Totally. Thank you for adding that. All right. So next question, how should we approach cold outreach? Is there anything that can give you an edge when reaching out to a potential employer?
So I'm assuming this is like, hey, Ben on LinkedIn, I would like to work at Stitch Fix. Here's my resume kind of situation. Is that?
That's what I'm
interpreting. What you're imagining? Yeah. I mean, to be honest, those are kind of a crapshoot, as I'm sure you probably know. Like, even resume reading is a crapshoot. So before I answer that question, I want to say another thing. So as a manager, I would every day I would look through all the resumes, especially when I was at Eventbrite, and I would get 20 resumes one day, and I would get 5 resumes the next day. Well, guess which days I was able to pay more attention to resumes too, right? So even if, I guess what I'm saying is that even if your resume gets rejected or whatever, sometimes it's not about you. It could have been about the day, how much time the manager had to review the resumes. So like, keep trying, like Sam was saying there. As far as cold emails, I actually think of it the same way I think of it when I'm trying to reach out to other candidates to try to recruit them, is that you have to try to find something specific that the manager or whoever you're talking to can grab onto. So something like, if it was me, I went to stitchfix.com. I viewed the source of the page and saw that you were using React. I did a boot camp. I learned React. I'm excited about React. Here's my resume. So that shows like, whoa, they actually know how to do that. They have some kind of ability, like, oh, all right, let me take a look at this resume and see what's going on. Like, in that case, you've already set yourself apart. Or, I went to the GitHub Stitch Fix, and I saw that you have a open source Ruby gem for such and such and such and such. Like, I think that's pretty cool. I worked on something similar in my boot camp. Like, that kind of thing, like taking the extra step, as opposed to like, oh, I'm going to find 20 people at 20 different companies and just send them my resume and just replace the name, hi Ben versus hi Brady versus hi Sam. Like, I can tell that was what was happening. So your chances of success are a lot lower in that case. So I think that can help.
And I mean, also just knowing that not everybody is going to respond. It's not anything personal.
Exactly.
It's just gonna be that way.
And a lot of it's timing too, like Ben said. It's just some days you don't have a lot of email and maybe you're just more likely to click on that person's email and read it. Some days you're just swamped. You just have tons of stuff you need to do. So some of it's just luck.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, I posted a link on, I just did a Google search because I remembered I seeing this on Twitter about this person, Niraj Pant, I think that's how you say his name. I'm not sure. How he sent the email to the CEO of Snapchat, and
Wow.
that's how he got in. And I forget what he's doing now. He's in the industry though, and but this was like his start. He just sent this like short email, and the CEO was like, I'll forward this to our lead recruiter, and that's how he got in from that cold email.
Amazing.
I haven't read this blog post, but I did a Google search and found the image which I used to find this blog post. my Google skills.
Yep.
And talking about timing of things, it could be something that maybe you want to play around with. When I was applying places after I had graduated, I had a contact that was going to refer me someplace. And she had a specific time that she wanted me to apply. I think it was like Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. And her reasoning was similar. It was like, over the weekend, a lot of people apply, maybe 20 people. So let the managers go through that long list and not have a lot of time to read each of them. But then Tuesday, that list should be cleared out. So by 10, they've gone through everything that came in overnight. Like, she had a very strategic time.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah, it's real.
They didn't consider me, but if you have somebody that is connected enough to know something like that, maybe see if you can get some info on that.
Yeah.
Cool. Next question. In a whiteboard interview, what things are you looking for in your interviewee? Working code, communication skills, thought process?
So all of the above, really. And it all depends on the interviewer. So you have some interviewers who are, I guess, more, I don't know if progressive is the word, but realization that it's not just about getting the answer, right? So when I'm interviewing people, we could not get the answer. You could not get the answer right, and I still give you a full score because of your thought process and how you got there. For instance, I was interviewing someone for at Eventbrite. She went to Hackbright Academy, so all women's bootcamp, and they do only Python. And we were interviewing her for our front end platform team. Had never done JavaScript before. And but I interviewed her, asked her a JavaScript question, and she was able to kind of translate what she knew into Python into JavaScript, ask the right questions like, oh, in Python, I could do this. How do you do it in JavaScript? And we kind of worked our way, pair programmed our way to the answer. And I could see like, wow, she was really smart. She was able to make that application. So she didn't write the JavaScript herself, but she was able to, work her way to that. And now she's a senior engineer at Netflix. Like, it's amazing how well she's done in like 3 or 4 years or so. So it's communication as well, like your thought process as to why you're doing something. The worst thing is when someone just kind of goes in their own self in a hole, not communicating what they're trying to do. I can like see them going off the deep end, but they're not hearing the suggestions I'm trying to give. Like, I really try to help and say, I try to give hints, not answers, but hints. Like, what if you thought about such and such and such and such? And if they don't hear that, it kind of, they're just like in their thought process, then that's really difficult. So the more communication you can do, the better, especially if I ask you a question, this is the problem we're going to solve. You repeat it back to me. So what I'm understanding is I'm trying to solve this and this and this and this. And some people will write it down in bullets. Like, that's the type of way I think. So I'm like, whoa, that's really good. But kind of just processing the question, I think, is really helpful as well. So you may have to like stop thinking about the problem and explain what it is that you're doing. Because I found the only times I'm able to talk while code is when I know the answer. Like I know what I'm doing. So I can just like the coding is just second nature. I'm just telling you what I'm doing. So it's really hard in an interview when you add in the fact that you're super duper nervous about getting the job. So, you know, take a step, stop, and then explain, oh, this is what I'm thinking I'm going to do, et cetera, et cetera. What do you think? And then, you know, proceed from there. So that all that stuff kind of helps in the interview. Obviously, getting the answer right is super helpful, right? And knowing the answer. But the process to get there is really key as well.
Plus one to everything.
Yeah, and hopefully it's not just some random algorithm thing. Like companies that do that, I don't want to say they suck, but it's just not the approach, right? It's what we try to do is we give a take-home exam, and then we'll have a pairing session that's based on that take-home exam, and then try to answer, even when you come into the interview, do stuff that's based on that take-home exam. It's more real kind of shared programming type of thing, as opposed to, okay, sort a linked list or, you know, whatever the case may be. It's based in some kind of real problem we're going to solve. And oh, by the way, to solve it, you got to use some algorithm, but it's like we're trying to solve something kind of legit. So it seems like more and more companies are getting wind of that's a better way to try to assess technical talent, but it's not always the case, unfortunately.
I just put a link for the GitHub that lists all the companies that don't do whiteboarding in interviews.
Man, you're like Mr. Link. You got links for everything.
He does. You should see the Slack channel.
Oh, man.
I spend a lot of time on the interwebs.
Yeah.
All right, next question. What soft skills are important to practice for somebody looking to enter the industry?
Soft skills. So I personally don't like the term soft skills because that makes it seem like the technical ones are the important ones or the hard ones. But I get what you're trying to say. I don't know. Some of the like the soft skills are really like your personality, right? And how you engage with people and how you communicate. So they're really best exercised in real world environments. So it's really hard to practice when I'm upset or disagree with someone, like how I respond in an environment like that. It's like, it's hard to practice that for an interview or something like that. So it's kind of experience is how you end up being able to know those, how you work in those environments. But I will say, like, though, those are the type of questions you will get in an interview. So an interviewer is going to try to should figure out your soft skills, quote unquote. So they'll say, in your project, you know, when someone wasn't pulling their weight in the project, what was your response? Or like, how did you handle that situation? How did you handle that conflict? And that gives the interviewer a sense of like how you would do something similar in the work environment. Or, you know, you had somebody who didn't understand the project or wasn't getting it, but have to do their part of the project. Like, how did you try to communicate with them or try to help them and pull them along? So it gives a sense of mentorship ability and communication. Do you just like kick somebody away when they can't solve it? Or do you try to bring them along? Because there are definitely people who do both of those. So yeah, just being aware of those things, and I guess practicing it with your family or your friends or things like that could be a helpful situation. And because it's really hard, it's not like a whiteboard question or algorithm thing that you can just practice. on some site or something like that.
It's true that they're called soft skills, and that can make it sound like not as important, because that really is such a huge part. The founder of Dev Bootcamp, so Dev Bootcamp was the first bootcamp that existed. The founder had gone around, he had this idea, I'm going to go teach people to become software engineers without going through CS degrees. And he was talking to a bunch of different CTOs, like, what would you like me to be teaching these students? And he was expecting all of these technical skill lists to form, and everything was like good communication, willing to take feedback. It was all these like soft skill things.
Yeah, organization. Like when I interview someone and I can tell that they're like organized, like that is huge, because that's a lot of what development is. You have somebody, you have your product manager telling you one thing, you have your engineering manager telling you another thing, your coworker saying this, and you just have to be able to organize like all the different things that you have to do, be able to prioritize. Like if you're able to do that, you have a huge leg up. That's why people who have been working for 5 years and then switch over to development, they already had that experience doing that and having to work with coworkers. So they have that experience, and they know how to manage their time. Like it's great. Like I would put them way above someone who then like just graduated from college and is just now figuring that kind of stuff out, because I definitely didn't know it well. It was something I had to figure out over time. So yeah.
And one of the other things that's kind of popping up into my head as I look at this question, I know I tend to like, how are you going to get better at a skill? By just trying to get better at it. For me, I have to model my behavior after something that I'm seeing. So I'm always looking at people that I'm working with. And that could potentially, for anyone without a job, that could be if you're attending some sort of hack night or something and you're working with people in the industry. How are people, the specific thing that I have noticed, I think is the soft skill that I needed most practice on, was asking the questions and admitting when I don't know what's going on.
Yep.
And that was something that a teammate of mine did so well.
Yeah.
I was always too embarrassed to say like, I am lost, but she had no problem. And I've grown so much from modeling my behavior after hers.
That's good. That's really good. Yeah.
Alrighty. Your views on Angular versus React.
So I'm 100% biased. Like I'm React all the way. So I've been doing React for 5 years or so now. So I would get Angular submissions for coding exercises and things like that, and I would see it and be like, this is fine, I guess. But I really prefer React over Angular. The thing is like Angular, Vue, React. There's another one that I'm blanking on that's kind of in the same space. What really matters is that they're able to do the job, and all of them are able to do the job. They just have different ways of doing it and different kind of mindsets of how they do the job. So what really matters to you coming up is like, which one do you want to pick in order to get the jobs that you want? Because if you are if you have Angular experience and you're trying to find your first job and it's a React place, it's going to be more difficult for you than somebody who already has React experience, for instance. But at an Angular shop, then it may be easier for you because you already have some of the understanding and the details of how Angular work. So there's like no like, obviously I think React is better because I've chosen it, but like objectively, I don't think one is better over the other. But you should pick React though.
Cosign.
Yeah.
I'm biased too, though.
Yeah, I'm 100%
I've been working with React for years as well.
I've only worked with React.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lyft is all React except there's legacy like Angular stuff, which
No one wants to touch.
I think they want to like try and shut all those things down.
Yeah.
It's like old Angular though. It's not whatever I don't even know what Angular is on now. Is it like Angular 8 or something?
I think it's 8. Yeah. I think it's 8.
And
But
I
I
think
will
it's
say, oh, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I think it's completely different from like Angular 1.
Yeah. What I was going to say, though, is that I've learned, so I've gotten the opportunity to speak at different conferences and go all over the country. And there are pockets. So the Bay Area feels definitely React biased. Obviously, I guess because it came Facebook and everything. But I'll go to the East Coast, and a lot of the shops there are .NET backend, Angular front end, right? So if you were in North Carolina, for instance, having Angular experience is actually really, really helpful because a lot of the companies there are using Angular. So it may also depend on where you are located as well. So there's that too.
Yeah. So just got to do your research on companies.
Yep.
Like if you're doing code applying, I think it helps to do some research first.
Yeah, when you're looking at a job description, they'll always say, or JavaScript technologies like X, Y, and Z. Experience with that or something. So X is the one they use the most. So, trying to have experience in X is great. Z is probably that legacy system that they do have that they, want to get away from or whatever. But if you're trying to figure out which companies to apply for and want to find the ones that are geared towards what you've already learned, yeah, pick that first language. That one generally is the main one.
Great. So should front-end engineers learn full-stack development to be able to keep up in this competitive market?
So I have opinions on this in general. So you should always know as much as you can know, right? It's always good to know more things. But my opinion, and I think this may differ from other people's opinions, is that I think people just starting out should focus on getting good at one thing. I actually wrote a blog post on this on my site. It's called the pop-off progression. So look for that blog post if you're interested, but I'll give a short synopsis of it. So basically what I've seen, again, is I've seen people come in, they've gone to a boot camp that's generally full stack to be able to allow their graduates to get as many job opportunities as possible. They go into the job, they fix a bug here in React, they fix a bug here in Ruby, they do this other thing, and they never really get good at one thing. They're always like okay at everything. They leave that job and they're trying to interview for the second job, and they're not really good at anything. So again, they're kind of on the same plane as somebody who's just coming up, except the person who's just coming up has more potential because you kind of already have seen what the person who's been working for 18 months can do. The assumption is that, okay, maybe that's only their capability. Whereas if my suggestion is you come into your new job when you're able to get it and they have the mentorship available, you start that new job and you kind of get to understand what your team is doing and try to find what part of the stack is the greatest need or a place where you can have the most impact that also aligns with what you're interested in. So if you're a front-end engineer, my suggestion would be find what part of the stack is the front end, understand it, maybe it's React, and get as good in React as you can, basically, to the point where you could leave that company and go get hired based upon your React skills. Like that is the mentality I suggest to people. Or if it's Ruby, you know, figure out how get really good at Rails or whatever, Sinatra, and understand it as good enough so that when you leave, you could get hired based upon that skills, and work with your manager to get projects that are always focusing on that skill set so that you can keep growing and growing and get depth in that area. So, but while you're doing that, you do want to have an understanding of how everything else works. So I'm a front-end engineer. I started off as a full stack, I guess, because that's what CS teaches you to be a back-end engineer. But anyway, I do all this front-end stuff, and I don't work in our Rails environment at Stitch Fix at all. But I have an understanding of how it works and how it integrates. So I'm calling APIs. I have an idea of how APIs work, so I can have conversations with those who are building the APIs. I have an idea of how the CI environment works because I use it. So you want to have an understanding of how all these things work. And in reality, you're never going to be able to just focus on React and never touch anything ever in 18 months. Like, that's unlikely. So you're going to have to be able to dabble here and there, but kind of still keep that focus on getting good at one thing. And I've seen people really, really be successful at that. And once you get really good at that one thing, then you can find the next thing. And that next thing could be the back end, or it can be databases, or it could be whatever the next thing is that could be valuable. And, you know, a year from then, now you're good at two good things. And whoa, now you're becoming or close to becoming a senior engineer because you have all of this depth in multiple places. So that's my suggestion. Other people say, you know, have a broad experience, be able to do things in lots of different areas. But I found that to be, I guess, less successful overall. So have an understanding, to answer the question, have an understanding of full stack, but especially front end. I feel like front end engineers are in more demand than full stack engineers, because having an understanding of working with different browsers, JavaScript frameworks in general, CSS, like that, those experiences are like falling by the wayside. Accessibility, SEO. So if you have an understanding of those, you can, it's I guess a defensible skill, I guess. You'll find yourself, it'll be easier, I think, to find a job opportunity.
Yeah, the front end is just getting more complex as the years go on. So I think that's like increasing the value for front end developers. Like, I started out full stack, and the past like Lyft hired me because they needed help with front end. Here Technologies hired me because they needed help with front end. Like, they had like one front end engineer in the whole office, and you could tell that all the other internal tools at Here Technology, you could tell all the other internal tools were built by backend engineers. It just looks like a database dump on the screen. And the UX, like, nobody can figure out how to like find what they're looking for, because there's like not a lot of thought in UX. It just, oh, here's a database table, let's just put it on the screen. So I think, yeah, if you like front end, do front end. If you like back end, do back end. You gotta try and find what you like gravitate towards, because then it's easier for you to like get better at it because you enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
And Miguel was asking, is this similar to the T-shaped individual analogy?
Yeah. So that's like, you know, a capital T. So you have depth in one area, but then, you know, your arms are in, you know, other areas. And I would say that's exactly it, is that I guess people try to become a hyphen instead of becoming a T. So try to go depth in whatever it is and find passion and understanding in that. But still, you have to understand how other things work, because then you get pigeonholed and you're not able to work and help out in other areas.
Great. So on to the next question. What interesting projects are you working on?
Interesting projects. So I'll share both in kind of myself and then at Stitch Fix. Maybe I should share Stitch Fix first. I'll be a company man. So at Stitch Fix, like I said, I'm working on our component library that's in React. And the goal is to enable all of the other feature teams that are building the awesome features for our clients, enable them to build things faster. So, we need to show a banner on the page, a success message or an error message, or the standard button and all its different flavors, or a modal, like those sorts of things were getting rebuilt in all the different apps. Sometimes they were copy and pasted, sometimes they were built from scratch, and that's just like a total waste of time. And also, like I was saying about CSS, people, for some reason, CSS has like fallen by the wayside. People are not excited about CSS. They don't know how to develop in CSS anymore. So the component library, its goal is that through props, you can configure things so that you don't have to worry about writing CSS. So a lot of our full stack engineers can add a modal to a page, space things out evenly with a stack component, and have a text component that gives you the text that you want and stuff like that. So they can avoid using CSS, but still build on-brand user interfaces. And the nice thing also about that is that accessibility, SEO, all those things are being built into it. So I get to learn a whole lot of stuff about accessibility and SEO and things like that as I'm building these components. And it's pretty exciting. I did it at Eventbrite. So this is like my second pass at it and trying to fix all the mistakes that I did before and trying to have a better API. I'm also building it in TypeScript. So it's my first time doing React and TypeScript together. And it's super fun. TypeScript is like super awesome and great to use with React, especially. I think it helps, like, especially since I'm using VS Code as well, it has a TypeScript integration. It just fixes a whole lot of problems that I just run into with React. Like as I'm typing, it's like, no, that's not correct. Like, so it's like, it's even kind of hard. Like I have a mini shop on using React and TypeScript, and I try to explain like how this solves problems that you usually run into with React. But it's really like the development experience with TypeScript and React that is just just awesome. I can't think of other superlatives, but it's awesome. Yeah, Sam says Lyft is all on TypeScript as well. So I'm trying to slowly migrate, I guess, Stitch Fix over to TypeScript. We're also working on GraphQL at the moment, so we're trying to limit the amount of new things that people have to learn at one time, but hopefully we'll get there. On the side, I guess, personal projects, right now I'm really trying to kick off this idea of virtual workshops that I'm doing. So now, obviously, with COVID and stuff, we're not able to go to in-person workshops, and learning shouldn't just be based upon, where you live. So I am kind of starting this side business of sorts, doing these workshops to try to help people learn things that they want to learn. So TypeScript and React, or migrating from React components to React hooks. I have an intro to React one as well. I have some other ideas that I'll be coming up with. So that's been like my main focus, is this whole learning push that I'm doing as well. So that's what's been keeping me busy on the side as well. But before that, one of my favorite projects that I was working on is that I was continuously creating open source libraries. And they're open source in that they're public. No one was really using them besides myself. but they're open. Maybe one day. So I kept having to rebuild all of this infrastructure, like setting up Babel, setting up Webpack, setting up ESLint, setting up whatever, all of that stuff, right? And each time I did it in the best way I knew how, but then I would look back at the old stuff and I was like, wow, that's terrible. So when I have to go back, oh, this thing doesn't have TypeScript. Oh, this thing doesn't have Prettier. So I created a open source library, kind of like React's Create React app or the React scripts library. So like all of the what I call the DevOps, or all of the front end infrastructure, is in one library. So I just have to run one package, and it does all of the Prettier and ESLint and things for me. So I just have to bump that one package, and all of my other libraries get the new hotness kind of for free. So I spend a lot of time building that. It's called the Bin MVP CLI, of course.
That sounds like a good tool. My least favorite part about front end is the DevOps part. Like TypeScript is awesome, but setting it up can be a nightmare if you're working in a big repo. I'm actually working on something like that right now. I'm working in a mono repo, and the mono repo has like 40 different packages, like sub packages that it builds, and I had to like set up the build process for all the sub packages and like trying to get TypeScript to work when we're using also, you got Jest in the mix and Cypress,
Jest is another thing.
And then TypeScript just keeps yelling at you like, no, your app won't build, and it's super hard to debug. The errors aren't always the greatest.
Oh man, they're terrible.
Sometimes TypeScript will blow up on its own code, and the stack trace is just TypeScript code, and I'm just like, how do I fix this? So
actually that's a funny area. So like what I was saying before, it's like, so at Eventbrite we had a hole. We needed people who understood how to do these things because we had to like manage our front end infrastructure. So I didn't like doing it, and we had other people who did it, who understood what how it worked. But then they slowly left Eventbrite, and I had to learn how to do it and maintain it. And over time, as you know, struggling and debugging, I actually got some expertise in it. So I don't even think I still like it, but I'm pretty decent at it. And now it's a skill set that I have that I can now use and get hired from and teach other people and things like that. So it was like totally opportunity. I would have preferred not to have learned it, but the team needed it, the org needed it, and then there you go.
Yeah, Lyft has a team that's dedicated to like front end tooling.
Yeah, you need a whole team to do it.
Yeah,
not half of a bin.
Things are getting really complicated.
So that's why I like the front end, because it's like the front end is basically encroaching on the back end. So there's all these, the front end is so huge now. It's more than just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
All right, next question.
Yep.
What were some impressive projects you've seen on portfolios, or which ones would you recommend for one's portfolio, given that it has their own personal touches?
Yeah. So somebody I ended up hiring at Eventbrite, he built an app about tacos to help sell tacos. I don't even remember what it was. I just remember it was about tacos. But it was something he was super passionate about, and like it met a need of something he was trying to do. So he was building something that he was excited about. So I could see that part. And then he obviously put a lot of effort into it because he was excited about it. So whenever anybody asks me, what side project should I do? Or even if I'm thinking about it myself, it's like, do something that meets some need that you care about, or solve some problem that you care about, because you'll be passionate about it. When you're explaining to other people, you'll be passionate about it. So that's always been the impressive stuff. It's never really been about the technology that they've used, like, because again, like the way you use Redux being someone who's new is not the way that it's going to be used professionally, like on a team or whatever. But the fact that you're able to put together something, ship it to production, and things like that is what's super important. And I think showing excitement, enthusiasm outside of your instruction is what's huge. So not everybody has that, time to do that, obviously. But if you're able to do that, I think that's the way to go. Something you care about. So whether it's tacos or hot dogs, whatever it is. Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
Sam, now I want tacos too. Thanks, Ben.
Yep.
I haven't eaten anything yet today. I'm kind of tweaking. I drank 2 cups of coffee and I haven't eaten anything yet. I'll probably go get tacos now.
Yep.
If I can find some taco place that's open. We're still on shelter in place here in the Bay Area. But some places are open for takeout. But yeah, I did a post on LinkedIn. I don't know if people saw a couple weeks ago where I just asked a bunch of people to post projects they were working on.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that stood out to me in people's like portfolios, they were just different. And they were like, you could tell it was trying to solve, like Ben was saying, a problem that they had, because otherwise I don't know how they would come up with it. Because one guy made this super awesome, it was like it generates email templates, because anybody who's tried to do email templates know it sucks.
Yep.
So he made this like no code kind of app that will like generate email templates for like people who do marketing or whatever. Then they don't even need a developer, they just use this tool and they can like make their email marketing templates. And I thought it was super awesome. He made a YouTube video, like a marketing video for it.
Wow.
And I watched that first before I went and played with the app, and I was like, whoa, this looks like a real company. Like you can like start a company, like just starting with like this tool, just sell like a service or something. So that one stood out to me the most, I think. And I think the YouTube video like helped. So
it was a professional looking YouTube video, if I'm thinking of the same one.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've actually referred that guy to like 10 people already. Like I get a lot of emails from recruiters, and I try to refer other people. But I can't just refer them like 100 people. Like they're not going to look at all those people. So I pick out the ones that have stood out to me in like projects that I looked at. Another one, I think her name is Karen. I forget what her last name is. She made these like video games in the browser, and I thought it was like really cool, because I have no idea how to make that, and I was like, wow. So I've actually been referring both of those people to recruiters, but yeah, so it was just different. Like I don't know if that's how hiring managers look at it, but like if I was hiring people,
for sure,
it just makes it stand out because it's different. It's not like a clone. It's not a clone of Twitter. It's not a clone of Airbnb or Etsy or something like that.
Exactly.
I personally like little like tools that help you do things, like either it's a Chrome extension or something, rather than like a full stack clone of some other site or some fake e-commerce store or something. But just that's me personally. I don't find those things kind of exciting. Like even on my GitHub portfolio, the things I have pinned are not full stack. They're not like CRUD apps. They're my project that has the most stars. I think it has like 60 something stars on it, and it gets about 5,000 downloads a week. Probably a lot is bots though. I don't know if really 5,000 people are downloading it every week. It's just one React component. And I open sourced it. I made it at a hack day at work a few years ago because it was a React component that I wanted to use. I work with maps a lot, and I use Uber's library React Map GL, which allows you to make visualizations easily on maps. And they didn't have a geocoder, so I Mapbox has a geocoder, and that's what React Map GL is built on, but there was no component. So I just made a React wrapper for that
Nice.
geocoder component. And it turns out tons of people also wanted that same thing that I wanted. So, and then like tons of people started starring it. A lot of people fork it because I haven't been very active on it. I tell people like I'm busy. You can just fork it. It's only one like React component. You can just copy and paste the code into your code base and modify it. So yeah, it doesn't need to be full stack like CRUD apps in your portfolio.
Yeah. So provided a hiring manager actually had the time to look at your resume and see that thing, so try to push it, you know. If they saw that and were able to go to the YouTube video or go to the GitHub repo, definitely that person would be selected.
Yeah, even for contractors, I had to review like contractor resumes, and one person had on their resume they had this project they made for React Native, and it was just something that like made it easier to work with the props. I forget what it was. It was some kind of tool for React Native, and it had tons of stars on it, and that like immediately like stood out to me. I like went and looked at it, and it was kind of a simple. It didn't have like a lot of code, but it had like tons of stars and a lot of like a lot of people were using it. So it was like a useful tool, and you can tell that that person made it because it was solving a problem they had. Like it was making their job easier with making their React Native apps.
I think anytime you can get real people out in the world to use the thing, either it's like the shipped product that's been deployed or like on GitHub. First of all, it's something that's awesome. It's always good when you can put numbers in your resume. So it's something, an easy number you can grab to add to your resume and it'll impress people.
Yeah, that stands out. I think he had like 1 million total downloads or something, and I immediately went and looked at like the code. I was like, "What is this? Why are so many people downloading this?"
Yeah, and it's like feedback you can get from people, you know, using it, which kind of shows that whole life cycle of a project, and as well as like this is not some tutorial you followed. Like you had to figure out the answer, the solution, how it was going to be, how it was going to look. So that sort of thing helps stand out from something that, you know, the answer already existed. You just had to follow some steps.
Yeah.
And that all being said, that's really cool that Form app was something that was solving an actual problem and could be a real business. But I know, Sam, you've talked about, I think it was a person in your cohort that made a Google Chrome extension that went viral for, I can't remember, like Ryan Gosling pictures or something.
I think her name is, I think her name is Catherine Champagne. You could probably Google that story. I think she got 4 job offers from like that thing went viral during her 4th week at that bootcamp or something. She just, at that bootcamp, they had a day where they let you work on anything. I think it was in the 4th week or something, just to give you a day off from like building what they tell you to build or like projects. And she just made a Chrome extension that changed every image on the page to Ryan Gosling "Hey Girl" memes. And it went viral. Like 20,000 people downloaded it or something like that. And I think she got 4 interviews out of, if I remember correctly, just because that thing went viral.
There you go.
And like I think she just did it because she thought it was funny and she wanted to learn how to make a Chrome extension. I made Chrome extensions just because I was annoyed by stuff. Like when Facebook launched the reactions, like before it only had like, and now when you hover over it, like shows all the things. And I don't scroll the feed anymore, but I used to use Facebook a lot and like constantly scroll the feed. And I got so annoyed that every time I was hovering over stuff, those things kept popping up. So I made a Chrome extension that just hid that. I looked up the CSS and all the Chrome extension does is it just makes that display none. And some people actually downloaded and like gave it like 5 stars. But yeah, I just made that because I was just annoyed at it. It made my experience worse, and I didn't want to use those reactions. So I just made that tool.
Nice.
All right, I think we can move on now. Next question is, which front-end technologies are very important for a developer to learn other than HTML, CSS, and JavaScript?
Interesting. Yeah. So there are a lot of focuses now in front end, like even front end is being divvied up into various different skills. So you have people, I don't know, I guess I'll call them web developers. I don't know what the title is, but people who are really good at HTML and CSS, animations, accessibility, SEO. Like there are people who are really, really good at that. And I think that is a kind of way focus you can go to. You won't start off that way, but you may find yourself gravitating towards that, or your team needs that skill set, or what have you. And then there are folks that are more UI, I guess. So they'll work with an Angular or React, a Vue in JavaScript, and focus a lot on that area. So building user interfaces and what that's like, and how you build all of the events and interactions and things like that. So that's very heavy JavaScript built, but it's built a lot on the UI framework that you're using. And then there are other people that are more kind of back end for the front end, which is like you're building the helper libraries around API calls, or you're building helper packages, like that stuff. A lot of that is a lot of JavaScript algorithms and making stuff optimally fast so that people can use it in that area. And then there's the DevOps part talked about, the front end infrastructure. So I think technologies more than, so HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are what kind of drive the web. So there are lots of technologies that are built on those things. So you can learn Tailwind CSS for CSS. You can learn, obviously, React in the JavaScript area and really get detailed in that area. You can learn Node, so you can do server-side JavaScript and be able to build full-stack apps and be able to leverage your JavaScript skills in building APIs, for instance. So there's like kind of lots of different areas I think that folks can go in on their front end technologies standpoint. And there are people, I'll just call them gatekeepers, but there are people who like to say that you have to know JavaScript before you develop in React. And I think that if you know JavaScript, developing React will be easier, but you don't necessarily have to know everything about JavaScript before you then put React on top. I'm all about building something and then learning as you build it. So you start building in React and you're like, what is this bracket thing they're doing with useState? Like, what is this about? And then you're like, oh, that's destructuring. Let me go see what destructuring is about. And then you learn destructuring instead of like having to go and just learn destructuring in some separate thing with no like specific thing that you're building. And it's like going to school at that point. So I'm just all about learning as you go. That's how I've done a lot of my learning after going to college and stuff. So kind of learning on demand, I think, will make it stick better, and you're learning what's actually important to you and stuff. So that's kind of my suggestion, is like whatever technologies they are, is just whatever you needed to learn as you were building whatever it is that you needed to know that way.
Yep, I agree 100%.
So it might come back to find that project you're really passionate about.
Yeah. Exactly.
Just go from there.
Yeah. And then you'll figure out what other things you needed to learn. So maybe you want to start writing tests for it, and then you have to learn, you end up learning Jest. Okay, you learn Jest that way. So
potentially another way to approach it, I think it's a lot more fun to do your own projects and be able to talk about that experience. But if you wanted to take a look around at some of the companies that you really are interested in working for and trying to match up those technologies. That could, like we were talking about earlier, that could depend on your location a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So maybe you decide to use React, but you're still building your own project, and then the reason the framework you decide to use, or the technology you decide to use, is because of this industry or these companies or whatever. Like you're gonna use Emotion JS or whatever technologies for CSS and JS you're gonna use because these companies are using it. So then you leverage that technology. But in the end, you're using it for something that you're passionate about, something that you're interested in. And you use everything cool at Lyft.
They're pretty on top of the game, the front end community at Lyft. We're also shifting towards our infrastructure to all the new front end apps they're recommending. Next.js, they actually built abstraction around Next.js. It's called Lyft Service, but under the hood, it's running Next.js. And you can see, like, if you spend a lot of time on Twitter and stuff, you can see things trending towards Next.js is like gaining a lot of steam. There's even create Next app now instead of create React app. I just made an app with it just to, I don't know if people saw my project on LinkedIn. I made this app using create Next app, and I just encourage like people to commit to it and just add anything and just see where it goes. So far, I think 4 people have made PRs.
Nice.
But yeah, it was just to start using Next.js and Vercel. I never used Vercel since they switched from being Zeet to Vercel. So I used to use their Now product. I think that's gone.
Yeah.
I don't think that exists anymore. But like Vercel, so nice. It took me like a minute to like deploy it. I just clicked buttons, like you do create next app, and then it brings up like a sample screen and it's like, click this to deploy your app, and you just click on the link. And then it just like walks you through the setup to connect the repo on GitHub. And then every time you merge to master, it just deploys. And when you make a PR, it shows you a preview of the PR. It makes it easier. Now you can review the code and actually see what the changes look like without screenshots. You just click on the link.
I use Netlify for that.
Yeah, Netlify is awesome too. I usually use Netlify, so I wanted to check out what Vercel was up to, because they seem to be giving Netlify some serious competition. Now I'm hearing a lot about Firebase, so I haven't tried Firebase's.
Yeah, that's something I want to try out. Firebase. Lots of things.
So yeah, these are all front end technologies. You can either just play around with stuff that's what I do sometimes. That's why I did this Next.js one. I like to play around with stuff that has hype on it just to see why it has hype on it. And Next.js is pretty fun to use.
Alrighty. Next question. How important is it to understand the logic behind HTTP requests and how the web works in general?
Yeah, so I mean, it's important to understand the environment in which we're, developing in, right? So, and I know that there are some interview questions that'll ask those type of things. So, what's the difference between a 200 and a 400 and a 500 and such? So I didn't know that getting started. Like I learned that as I started working with APIs and API developers and understanding, what response makes sense and things. And now as a front end developer, I can give suggestions to API engineers like, hey, we should return a 201 in this case because of it's adding something new or what have you. So I think just having a basic understanding of how when the user gets to the page to the time that they hits the URL to the time that they get meaningful content back, like what all in general happens. I think that's a good thing to understand. Like if you are wanting to go into that field and really focus on back-end development and things like that, then you'd want to know more specifics. But just having a rough understanding, I think of that is helpful. Like understanding what SEO is, what it's about, all the different kind of marketing tools that happen for tracking and things like that. Like those sorts of things are good to know. But those are also the sorts of things that you'll get to know as you start working in your first job or your next job and things, like kind of learning those on demand again. So it's important to know, but I don't think you have to know it like in great detail, in my opinion.
Sorry, couldn't find the unmute button. Yeah, I think that sounds fair from my experience too. So next question, if you had to recommend one framework to master for a recent bootcamp grad, what would that be? What is the best resume advice you have?
So obviously it should be React. That would be the framework that you should master. I mean, I would say in general, if you had to pick one, that's the most popular one. And if you're just trying to hedge your bets and be able to find the most companies, I think the most companies I've seen, they use React. So I would pick that for sure. And there's also lots of resources about React and lots of conferences about React, workshops about React. People do streaming on Twitch about React. Like there's just so much around it. I know that's the community I'm in, so I see a lot of it. So maybe I'm definitely biased, but I would definitely choose that for sure as a recent bootcamp grad, if that's not what they taught, inside of your bootcamp, for sure. And the thing is, like, you're not going to master it unless you build things in it and build real things in it, like we were talking about before. So in my opinion, you don't really master something until you've had to debug it and then figure out why it works the way that it works. So, I know all of these random things about React because I did it the wrong way and then my app was broken, or I had this weird asynchronous issues going on or timing issues going on. And then I realized, oh, I have to do this, or it wasn't performant because, I wasn't memoizing my callbacks, or, all these random things you end up knowing because you've done it wrong. And then you have to do it right and figure out what's going on. So the best way to master something is experience. But yes, React is my choice. Then the other question was best resume advice you have. So there was always this advice that resumes needed to be one page because hiring managers were printing them out. So they needed to be one page. So I don't know of any hiring managers that are printing out resumes to look at them now, but I still suggest that they should be one page because, as we were talking about before, they're having to go through lots of resumes. So if you have this long CV of 7 pages about, all of the awards you've won and all this random things, or going into all this detail about the projects you've worked on, it's just going to be, too much. So really focus on what's the most important thing. So if you have job experience, definitely put that on there. That's really key. And then bullets about what your responsibilities are. And then as you list those responsibilities, mention a technology that was attached to them. Because some companies have keyword scrapers or whatever you call it. So having the technologies listed there is important. But say something like, I was responsible for migrating React class components over to hooks or something like that. So it says what your responsibility was, what you had to do, but also mentioned a technology. Or I had to improve the jest tests that we ran or what have you. Or whatever the work is you have to do. We were building a new user experience to enable clients to be able to buy again. And that was written in React, like just those kind of bullet points there. And then if you don't have work experience, just list the projects that you have done, but still write it as if it was work experience, I guess, the projects. So list out what the project was, and then what the kind of key points of it, and then the technologies that were used that way. But really keep it as concise as possible, but mention the key points as well. So it's kind of a balance. But just like no one's going to, click to page 2 of a Google search, no one's going to go to page 2 of your resume, in my opinion. So yeah, try to keep it short. But then also like visually appealing, I guess. Like, have the maybe bold some things or have bigger font for the companies and when you were there, like make it easy to scan as well. Just try to make life easier for whoever's reviewing it.
I could talk for days on resumes. Yeah. I've been spending a lot of work helping people update their resumes recently.
Nice.
I know some people, I think maybe more conservative companies, maybe like financial institutions, people still print out resumes.
Okay.
Them. So that might be good to keep in mind for like contrast. If you're having, if you want to put any colors on, it could be very different printed versus on the screen. But just what you were saying with the nobody's going to go to the second page. Also, just prioritize. What do you want? What do you think is your best sell? Put that up higher. It doesn't have to all be chronological necessarily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen resumes where someone has like a highlight section at the top and then they go through their chronological things. Like, yeah, there's lots of different ways to be creative in that way.
Cool. Oh, thoughts on pair programming?
So I used to dislike pair programming before I came to Stitch Fix, where I started doing it a whole lot. Because with pair programming, like if I pair programming where we both didn't know the answer felt like we were wasting both of each other's time, kind of. Like we're basically like going around, like figuring it out. It's like, I don't know. It just felt that way. So pair programming when I didn't know the answer and they were helping me, that was great. Pair programming when they didn't know the answer and I was helping them was great as well. But then it's not really pair programming. It's like teaching or something like that. But now I've been doing it a lot at Stitch Fix. It's just like built into the culture. Like, hey, let's hop on a call. Let's pair on this thing and figure it out. So someone will have a problem and I'm like, I have no idea. You clearly don't have an idea. That's why you're asking. So let's figure it out. Let's, see what the result is. And I've seen a lot of benefit in that way. So like I'll learn, sure, we'll figure out the answer eventually, but I'll learn other things about how they debug, how they think about things. And also, since I am remote, like I don't just see people around and have casual conversations with people. So hopping on a pair programming call to pair on something has been great to just meet people and talk as well and get to know people and things like that. So I found it very, very useful now. And now I'm an advocate for it. So
how are you doing the pair programming? Like, do you use a special kind of software or are you just like sharing your screen?
Yeah, usually sharing the screen. Like if I could, the one thing I want in Zoom is to be able to just like circle things and just draw something just real quick. Like I'm pointing at this thing, which is annoying. So Slack has it, which is great, but Slack's thing is just terrible.
Does Slack still have it? I know at least our company.
I just used it.
Yeah. Okay. Our version got discontinued somehow. So maybe we downgraded because that is the one thing that
So I know Zoom has like annotations, but like it takes work to get into it or something. It's just not like Zoom is just like I just draw on it. It's just like Slack, and I just draw on it and it has it. So that's like so that we usually do Zoom and we do it over that. Some people I have done VS Code live share. So we are all in the same code, especially like when we both need to code something up and try things. That's been super helpful. And that technology is amazing. I still don't understand how it works, but it does. So that's also been something that we've used.
Somebody said in the chat that Zoom does have that ability.
Yeah, it has annotations. Maybe you have to like turn it on before the call starts because sometimes I don't see it. I'm not quite sure, but it's just not as approachable as Slack's. But I'll have other issues with Slack's calls.
I'm so excited to hear that drawing still exists in Slack. I'm going to look into that on Monday.
It's my favorite feature.
Totally. I was heartbroken when it went away for us. Next question. This was posted at like 2:25, so I think you went over some of them, but maybe we can talk more about if you were an interviewee, what questions would you ask your interviewer?
Yeah. So we covered some of them as well. So you want to get an idea of what it's like to work there. I'm assuming that's one of the questions you want to know is what it's like to work there, but ask it in like, always try to ask it in a way that someone can't answer it in the best case scenario answer. So like, oh, this is how it really should work in the best case. Like, it's like, tell me about a person who, has kids and has work-life balance. Like, how do they do it? Because that's something that's super important to me. Like, how do they do that? Or tell me about the last person who got promoted into a principal role. Like, what was their role? What did they have to do to get there? So it's not just like generalizations. Like, I want specific answers in that regard. So what other things? Like, the hard part in the beginning is that you don't know what you need to know until you get there. And you're like, oh yeah, I should have asked about those sorts of questions. So mentorship, I think, is key. Like, on the team, like, who are the senior people on the team? Will they be available to mentor? Like, have they had to do this before? Sort of thing. Is there a specific mentorship program in place or something informal? Those sorts of questions. And yeah, there's lots of different questions. I'm trying to think of more, but the key is really just having some specific questions to ask. So you can ask specific things, or like, what's the project life cycle? Do you work in 2-week sprints or 1-week sprints? Do you do code reviews? How do those work? Because some companies don't do code reviews, which I don't understand. Just like all those kind of process questions, I think are really good to ask. And then hopefully out of that, you will have other questions that pop up in your head as well. Can people work from home? What does that look like? How do people take off? Do they need to take off or ask for time off 3 weeks in advance? Or can you just do it, whenever you need it? Those sorts of things are really helpful for the lifestyle aspect of it.
Yeah, I always ask about team structure too, like if they have like product managers and if there's designers like on the team, because I like balanced teams where you have like front end, back end, designer, product manager, but like some small startups and even some bigger companies, they don't have that structure.
Don't have PMs.
Yeah. So I always ask that question.
But it's like, that's meaningful to you now because you've been in the situations where you haven't or you had, so you understand it. So it's like, the answer to that question actually matters to you, I guess, or means something to you. But as someone who's just getting started,
that's true.
with the answer to that I don't know. Would it make sense? Like, oh yes, they have PMs or not? Like, I don't know. I'm just trying to work.
I was worried about joining a team and having a bunch of CS geniuses, like CS grad geniuses, be my coworkers. So I was asking, like, are there people with alternative backgrounds who like through boot camp? And
what's the gender makeup? What's the diversity makeup on the team?
Totally,
like, yeah. Are there other Black people at the company? Like those sorts of things. I try to find other ways to ask that question, not so direct, but you know, yeah. Good things to find out if they matter to you.
Yeah. And then also I've noticed I had this expectation of, for myself, what I should be able to do within maybe like 3 months of my job. And it was really not realistic. So I'm lucky that we have a career ladder that kind of outlines what is expected at each level. And not every company has that. So in the future, I think that's something that I would like to ask, if there's a career ladder, and like how often would I be communicating in one-on-ones with like my manager or a team lead or something.
Yep. Oh yeah. Speaking of which, I ask like, how many direct reports does my manager have? Because if it's 20, then I'm not going to really get that much one-on-one time. But if it's 7, then, you know, I'll be able to have weekly one-on-ones and things like that. So yeah, those kind of questions that you wish you would have asked once you start are key.
Great. Wow, I think we're at the last question, like under 2 hours. It's amazing.
Okay. Got to answer it in 3 minutes.
You've interned at Yahoo, Amazon, Microsoft, and all your work experience. What advice do you have for hitting the ground running and best impression from day one?
Yes. So, yeah, I think the thing that I have seen, especially from new grads, is this desire to want to prove themselves. So they're always coming in and, you know, they want to prove that they belong there. I'm sure part of it is the what's it called? The phrase where you don't believe that you can do what you can do.
Imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome, yes. So part of it is that, I'm sure, but that I found that can actually get in the way. Like they're trying to prove themselves and not really being willing to listen and be mentored and stuff like that. But really just like come in and try to find a place where you can help out. So usually it's the tickets that have been languishing. It's like, oh, this thing needs to be fixed, but it's low priority, or this bug needs to be fixed. Like, I feel like even as I come in having all of this experience, that's what I do. Try to find the areas where I can kind of be of service first to help the team and to learn the code base, but then like do something like that the other team members didn't want to do, and that now and take something off of their plate in that regard. So it doesn't have to be something huge, this big feature, but like, oh, you know, you fixed these flaky tests, or you wrote tests for this thing that never existed. I think tests can be a great way to kind of hit the ground running, because you can't break production writing tests, I don't think. We'll see. Maybe somebody will figure out a way to do it, but you can definitely help the code base be better writing tests. So that's definitely one way. And just kind of also listen in every meeting, write down notes, and just try to understand how everything kind of comes together is a way to hit the ground running. It doesn't necessarily mean hitting the ground running doesn't necessarily mean launching a feature in week 1. I guess that's what it is. And I think, you know, we have that impression that that's what we need to be doing because we're developers now, but there's lots of other things you can do to set yourself up for success kind of moving forward. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep. Well, we made it through all the questions.
Yeah, those are lots of great questions.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today. That
Of
was
course.
2 hours
Yeah.
of Q&A. But
So I did want to
during
give the final plug. Brady said I had to remember at the end. So like I said, I'm giving a workshop on Tuesday morning and about converting over from React components over to React hooks. So if you learned components but haven't learned hooks, or so it's important that you know React because we're going from one to another. But I'm giving away 2 free tickets to anybody who's wants to
Woohoo!
participate in that. If you have the time to join for those 3 hours, it's 8:30 Pacific to 11:30. So just hop on Twitter, send me a direct message, or hop on LinkedIn, send me a direct message there, and I'll be able to hopefully hook you up with a ticket to that. So you don't have to have you don't have to be an expert in React, but I would suggest having, if you've built something in React and kind of understand how React works, that'll be helpful because I won't be able to teach what setting state means or that sort of thing. But so yeah, it's kind of taking a step on already knowing React.
Yeah, and hooks can be a little hard to get started with, especially if you're kind of new to React.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely everybody's switching over to hooks.
Yeah.
Like we only write hooks now, and we slowly upgrade like older components in our code base on my team. Like
Yeah.
if we touch it, maybe we refactor it if it's not like really that complicated. But yeah, at first, even for me, I have a lot of experience with React, and I didn't like hooks when I first did it. It was just the API was strange,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't see a lot of benefits. But as you start learning how to use it, then you're just like, holy crap, this is way better. Why did we do it that way before?
Yeah. So I teach intro to React as well and use hooks from the beginning. And it's like way easier to teach. And I think people pick it up a lot easier than the class-based way. So I think it's harder to go from classes to hooks than to just start with hooks from the beginning, for sure. So just another kind of mental paradigm shift.
I was kind of like halfway through understanding classes and hooks came out. And I was
Yeah.
like, wow, this is so much easier. I'm going hooks.
Yeah. 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 Now sometimes when I have to work in classes, I'm like, how does this work again? I can't even remember. This is so weird.